Next week, Tuesday, South Africa will commemorate 44 years since the Soweto youth uprisings. Now, on that day, hundreds of school children took to the streets protesting against the use of Afrikaans as a forced medium of instruction in schools. And over 170 children are said to have been killed by police on the 16th of June, 1976. Today, however, that day signifies the struggles of young South Africans and how they maneuver around some of those struggles. Now, Stats SA, most recent quarterly labor force survey, put the country's youth unemployment rate at 58.1%. That was in the last quarter of 2019. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic upon us, that number has skyrocketed. Well, to talk to us about how we put young South Africans back into sharp focus, we are joined by economist Ndumiso Hadebe and independent analyst Tessa Dooms. Guys, a good afternoon to you, or evening rather. Thank you for speaking to us. Tessa, I want to start with you. Every year around this time, you'd see, the national celebrations and the grand sort of parties at stadiums that government would then throw. Are we upset that that's not happening this year?
Absolutely not. I've always believed that June 16 should, and the month of June should not be one for celebrating just for the sake of it, but should actually be a month where we think about how do we actually address young people's problems, where we're initiating programs, where we're doing things that actually speak to where young people are at, what youth development means, as opposed to be a mood that is celebratory. It should be a working month.
Yeah. Ndumiso, I'm going to bring you in here. You're a young economist. You're doing a lot of work with young people on the ground as well. And I wonder if when we speak about young people, we should really be talking more about giving them economic access more than anything else.
For sure. I think even in addition to the question of economic access, I think when we look at the developmental lens of the trajectory of the upward social mobility of young people, we need to look at it from the perspective of access and success. I should also say, Naledi, that the remedies towards poverty, inequality, and unemployment is already known. It's known and it's registered in literature around the world. And the answer to those triple threat challenges is based on the empowerment of women, simply put. We've all know that with households that have more educated women, that the children that tend to grow up in those households tend to have better upward social mobility. And as a consequence, when you empower women, the government, in essence, then saves on a lifetime of social grants and a lifetime of free housing. Yeah. So I think even the focus, when we're looking at Youth Month, we ought to focus on the empowerment of young women in particular.
Yeah. Tessa, let me come back to you now, because we have politicians across the board in South Africa right now talking so much about the pandemic and how we deal with the stress on our health system. Should we be focusing on young people as well? I mean, we're not talking about young people anymore.
Yeah, and that's a real pity in this time, because the pandemic has a large impact on young people's lives, right? So the first impact is a health impact. We need to remember that TB and HIV, which are two conditions that are comorbidities that severely impact on people when they get coronavirus, are also things that affect young people in this country. Yeah. Not to mention things like obesity and hypertension. Young people are probably less likely to get hypertension, but certainly obesity is not something that is foreign to the lives of young people in South Africa. And so it would be, it doesn't make sense that you don't think about young people's lives during this time, even at a health level. Young people with asthma, young people with other health risks. We've created a narrative that COVID is about older people and people who are not healthy, and we've said that young people are not included in that, when actually they are. And their health also matters. The time that they spend out of work, for example, for those who are unemployed because they are ill or they have to self-isolate for 14 days. Yeah. Even if you don't become ill, you have serious implications. And then, of course, the economic ones that Ndumiso has already started to speak about. But young people's lives are being disrupted in very serious ways. And the final thing is probably the mental health crisis that this could cause, with the trauma around violence around just the uncertainty of this time is affecting young people deeply.
Yeah. Ndumiso, if we then talk about how we put the power back in young people's hands, right? There's the discussions around all the challenges they're facing, but there's also an opportunity for young people to be part of the solution here. And in fact, you're spearheading a project that allows young people to do just that.
Certainly, and this specific project called 750AMPED, it's really a skills development perspective to ensuring that young people over this time are able to acquire skills that would enable them to have a better or much more improved upward social mobility in a post-COVID-19 economy.
Yeah. And how do we then start to duplicate these sort of things across the country, right? Where we say young people can be part of the solution to our communities, Tessa. You know, yesterday when the ruling came out of the Concord on the Electoral Act, I thought about how very often when you speak to young activists, they don't want to get involved in politics. But do you think that kind of change in our political landscape will invite young people then to be part of the solution?
Yeah, I do think that young people need to understand what the voting system is and what it means for their lives. I mean, already now, even before this judgment came through, young people could be contesting for local government elections, for example, as independent candidates. But there hasn't been a lot of civic education to allow young people to understand what that opportunity looks like. And there hasn't been a lot of financial support and other kinds of support mechanisms to help young people get into politics. But there's also, just in the time of COVID, even notwithstanding the judgment, besides the kind of core economy, there's also the economy of care and the social economy in our country that young people have been involved with all the time. We know young people are volunteers in their communities. They're always helping out. They're doing things to assist and to aid. And all of those things are also work. They're also opportunities for young people to be valued and to be given resources. And they can be part of the solution in so many ways.
Yeah.
We've seen the education crisis. Young people can be teachers' assistants. The health crisis, they can be community healthcare workers.
Right.
Young people are more than just the formal sector employment they could get. They are value adds to the society in broad ways.
Yeah. Tessa, thank you so much for speaking to us. And Ndumiso, I'm going to wrap this up with you. And I consider myself still youth. I'm barely still in there, but I'm still there. A message to young South Africans this month.
I think the message that I can share with young people today is that more now than ever do we need the ingenuity, the enthusiasm, the activism and the volunteerism of young people over this time so that we can be able to really overcome the challenges that come with the disproportionate implications of COVID-19 today. I think the ideas, the creativity that young people have, more now than ever, they have to execute and act and be activists when it comes to those ideas.
Yeah. Ndumiso, thank you so much for speaking to us. Economist Ndumiso Hadebe, thanks as well to Tessa Dooms, independent analyst. Let's take a short break. We're back in a moment.